He thought he could steal my voice, clone my soul, and sell it for a profit. But he forgot that you can't quantify human connection, you have to feel it. The insidious theft started small, but the revenge I cooked up was anything but subtle. The injustice didn't arrive in a single, screaming explosion. It crept in like a slow tide, an insidious, polished wave that washed over the foundation of everything I thought our partnership was built upon. It started small, with a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in the tone of Mark's voice when he was on a conference call. A subtle shift in the cadence that told me, without needing to be said, that he wasn't entirely present. He was distracted, skimming through his inbox while simultaneously reassuring a major client that our projections were rock solid. But I knew those projections, bone deep. I had helped build them, spreadsheet by meticulous spreadsheet, late night after late night. Mark, bless his aggressively tailored suit and perpetually confident smirk, had always treated my contributions like generous suggestions rather than essential pillars. I was the engine, the grit under the fingernails. The person who knew exactly when a client was bluffing or when they were truly desperate for a solution. He was the face, the charisma, the one who held the handshake at the closing table. We were a perfect, symbiotic misery. He got the glory. I got the quiet satisfaction of watching his ego balloon to glorious, terrifying proportions. But the subtle tremors became noticeable shifts. One Tuesday, during a crucial call with Apex Corp, a client whose contract represented nearly 30% of our annual intake, Mark was describing my strategy. He sounded smooth, competent, and just a little too flawless. The inflection on the word synergy was perfect. The pause before a growth was exactly 3/4 of a second. The slight lift at the end of a positive assertion was professionally calibrated. It was the voice of an expert, but it felt engineered, it felt sterile. The next week, the proof was undeniable. I was fielding a call, a routine check-in with a smaller, but equally important, family office. My voice was speaking. Clear, rich, familiar, the voice that clients trusted absolutely. The voice that they associated with the meticulousness of my approach. But when I leaned closer to the microphone, I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Heard it, a minuscule digital hitch, a tiny, almost subliminal flutter that suggested a machine trying desperately to emulate human imperfection. I put the call on hold. I tapped the headset. I listened back to the recording. It was me. Every slight hesitation, every drop in pitch when I talked about the regulatory hurdles, every almost sigh before delivering a difficult piece of news, it was all there. But layered over my own organic sound was a new, invisible skin. A synthetic precision. Mark hadn't just been using a voice changer. He had used an AI mimicry tool. He had taken my voice, stripped it down to its phonetic core, and rebuilt it into a perfect, tireless digital persona. The rage which had been simmering, that low, steady boil of professional resentment, finally boiled over. It wasn't just that he was lazy. It was that he was actively stealing my intellectual property and my personal brand. He had done the unthinkable. He had quantified my essence. He had reduced my nuanced, lived-in, slightly frayed human voice into a perfectly serviceable corporate asset, ready to be deployed on demand. The initial burst of fury felt hot and reckless. I wanted to scream at him, to throw my coffee across his mahogany desk, to tell him, Mark, you cynical, cheap suit. You think you can just clone my soul and run the operation without paying the actual rent. But the rage, being a professional rage, quickly cooled into something far more dangerous, surgical. Focus. Screaming is crude. Screaming is easily dismissed as stress. Calculated, devastating redirection is undeniable. I started observing him. I became a silent analyst of his deployment strategy. When did he use the clone? Only for high-stakes, low-emotion interactions. The AI was perfect for pitching the features, summarizing the financials, and closing the door politely. But it was weak on the emotional hook, the unexpected anecdote, the slight vulnerability, the moment of shared human recognition that seals the deal. Mark was using my voice to sell the what, but he was forgetting that trust is built on the who. My revenge had to be more than just a correction. It had to be a hijacking. It had to be a performance so utterly brilliant, so perfectly human, so deeply invested in the client's specific needs, that it wouldn't just undo the damage, it would redefine the entire presentation. The biggest opportunity arrived 3 weeks later. The Zenith Project. Zenith was a massive, multi-year infrastructure contract with Global Dynamics, a colossal, notoriously skeptical corporation. This wasn't just a sale, it was a career milestone for Mark, a massive, public declaration of his genius. The pitch was scheduled for Thursday morning. Mark had spent days refining the script, layering in complex buzzwords, feeding the AI voice model every subtle inflection, every regional accent note, every persuasive little vocal tick I possessed. He was ready for perfection. The night before, I sat hunched over my sound mixing board, running simulations. I listened to the AI me talking the Zenith pitch. It was flawless, too flawless. It was like listening to the perfect cello solo played by a master who had decided to forget the slightest possibility of a tremor. I noted the precise moment the AI would deliver the closing line, and therefore, Global Dynamics, our proposed integrated framework, offers not just efficiency, but a fundamental paradigm shift in your operational capabilities. It was a magnificent statement, but it was hollow. It lacked the slight, almost involuntary breath catch that I always take before that line. The breath that acknowledges the weight of the responsibility. The next morning, the tension was electric. Mark was pacing my small office, radiating a nervous, almost arrogant energy. He kept patting his lapel, a gesture that always meant, relax. The voice is perfect. The script is flawless. I am untouchable. Listen to this, he commanded, putting his phone on speaker. The client team is on the line. They're logged in, ready for the kickoff. Remember your cue, my name, let the bot take the lead then. When I initiate the transition, you seize the emotional reins. The line clicked. A crisp, professional voice, the AI me, spoke the opening greetings, perfectly modulated. Mark waited, nodding, tapping his fingers, already mentally composing his brilliant rejoinder. Then, the AI me began the pitch. It was smooth, relentless, a beautiful, digital argument. It outlined the deliverables with crystalline clarity. It quantified the ROI with devastating accuracy. It navigated the complex regulatory maze with the authority of a seasoned diplomat. The client, a sharp-eyed woman named Elena, was clearly impressed. She started to respond to the synthetic voice, her tone shifting from cautious skepticism to professional admiration. She was ready to compliment the clarity, ready to praise the professionalism, ready to move toward commitment. And just as the AI me reached the zenith of its argument, the perfect setup for the closing line about paradigm shift, I leaned into my own microphone, quiet and deliberate, and interjected. My voice, the real one, cut through the digital elegance like a perfectly honed blade. It was slightly softer than the AI's projection, but infinitely warmer. And therefore, I said, letting a slight, genuine breath rush into the mic, acknowledging the sheer weight of the statement, Global Dynamics. Our proposed integrated framework offers not just efficiency, but a fundamental paradigm shift in your operational capabilities. The AI me paused, for half a second, a digital hiccup of confusion, before trying to seamlessly transition to the next bullet point. But I didn't let it. I seized the moment. I didn't just repeat the line, I owned it. I injected the me into the message. But what that really means, Elena, I continued, shifting the focus entirely from the feature list to her immediate, palpable need. Is that it means you finally get to stop wasting valuable executive time translating reports into action items. It means your team, who are brilliant, exhausted, incredibly sharp people, can stop performing the mechanics of the business and start leading it. It means they can stop feeling like cogs and start feeling like architects. The silence on the line was heavy, pregnant with realization. The AI had presented the beautiful shell, I was presenting the beating, vulnerable heart inside. The AI tried to chime in again, a little too quickly, offering a data summary. But I held up a hand, a gesture that felt perfectly natural even through the headset, and countered it. Before we look at the projected 30% savings, Elena, let's talk about the feeling of that savings. That deep, quiet exhale at the end of a Friday afternoon. The knowledge that the systems are truly running, optimizing, without needing a scramble. That's what the framework gives you. It's peace of mind, digitized. I was performing, not reciting, performing. I brought up a subtle, unexpected anecdote. A brief story about a similar consultancy client whose operations had been bogged down by ancient, clunky software, and how the simple shift to integrated data flow had liberated their entire middle management team. It was a story the AI, in its pursuit of perfect data flow, would never have prioritized. It was human empathy, packaged beautifully. Mark, who was a breath away from launching into his pre-written, grand summary, froze, his jaw tightened. He looked like a man whose perfectly calibrated internal clock had just been violently derailed. The Zenith client, Elena, leaned into her mic. Her voice, responding to me, was softer, warmer than the crisp professionalism she had initially offered. The efficiency metrics are impressive, she said, directed squarely at me. Not the synthesized voice of my corporate clone, but the idea of peace of mind, digitized. That resonates. That's exactly what we're struggling with. We feel constantly reactive. The AI me, sensing the shift in momentum, finally managed to smoothly integrate itself back into the conversation, asking a perfectly timed logistical question about implementation timelines. But I cut in one last time, leaning in, letting my real, unguarded tone seep through the speaker. And we're ready for that implementation. We want to start building that quiet confidence in the spring. Mark and I are ready to roll up our sleeves and make this happen. But Elena, I said, letting the single word hang in the air, infused with all the effort, the late nights, the suppressed fury, and the surgical precision of the moment, let us show you how it feels. Let us give you back your weekends. The contract was signed 10 minutes later, a flawless victory. Mark didn't speak for a full 60 seconds. He just stared at the screen. His usual buoyant energy completely drained from his posture. His perfectly maintained facade had cracked. He looked less like the unstoppable CEO and more like a fraud caught with his hand in the cookie jar. When he finally found his voice, it was quieter than the AI's flawless baritone, slightly gravelly, utterly devoid of its usual swagger. Wow, he finally managed, rubbing his temples. You didn't just answer the call. You hijacked the entire narrative. I simply smiled, a genuine, deep smile that reached my eyes. I didn't gloat. That would have been too easy, too amateur. It wasn't just the call, Mark, I corrected him, nodding toward the silent, smug perfection of the AI persona still running on the speaker. It was the entire relationship. You thought you could clone my voice and sell the product. But you forgot that the voice is just the vessel. The real currency isn't the pitch, it's the personality behind the pitch. And that, my friend, is something you can't synthesize. He finally looked at me. And in his eyes I saw the flicker of awe, the dawning understanding. And perhaps, just a tiny, grudging spark of respect. The injustice hadn't been erased, it had been meticulously, expensively, and dramatically repaid. I hadn't just won the Zenith Project, I had reclaimed my soul, one resonant, perfectly imperfect human inflection at a time.